Hi, I'm Michael Azarad, Editor-in-Chief of the Talkhouse, and welcome to the Talkhouse Music Podcast. In the late 80s, when they were in college, Laura Cantrell and Mac McCaughan played in an indie rock band called Bricks. They released a cassette and a couple of singles, and then went their separate ways. Cantrell went on to become a very acclaimed country singer-songwriter, beginning with her 2000 debut album, Not the Tremblin' Kind, which became a big favorite of legendary BBC DJ John Peel. And another big fan, Elvis Costello, said, "If Kitty Wells made Rubber Soul, it would sound like Laura Cantrell." Laura now has 5 studio albums, and her most recent, last year's No Way There From Here, is possibly her best. She'll have a compilation of her BBC sessions out next year, and she's playing a bunch of shows around the Northeast this November. After Bricks, Mac went on to found the perennially beloved indie rock band Superchunk, and, along with his Superchunk bandmate Laura Balance, he also founded the powerhouse indie record label Merge Records. Merge has, of course, released countless classic records by the likes of Spoon, Arcade Fire, Caribou, Neutral Milk Hotel, The Magnetic Fields, and many other excellent bands. Mac also plays with his band Portastatic and, earlier this year, released Non-Believers, his first album under his own name. You could read much more about Laura and Mac's friendship and music in Our Noise, The Story of Merge Records, the excellent oral history of the label by John Cook, with Mac McCaughan and Laura Balance. Even though Laura Cantrell and Mac McCaughan have taken different musical paths, they've not just maintained their long friendship. They've both stayed true to themselves and to their art, and carved out respected, sustainable careers. So we figured we'd put them together for a Talkhouse Music Podcast, and have them catch up, reminisce, compare notes, and share a little wisdom. So here's Laura Cantrell and Mac McCaughan in conversation for the Talkhouse Music Podcast.
You know, I was thinking about this today because I was listening to your most recent record on the plane, just to refresh myself.
That's cool.
Which is also my favorite record of yours. It made me think about when Laura and I met in college, and we played music together, and you played music, but
Right.
I had been in bands in high school.
Right.
Punk bands and stuff, but had you performed, did you have a band where did you play music publicly before college?
No, I was in the folk group at my church and stuff like that, but I wasn't hadn't ever occurred to me to be in a band. I did have some friends that were musical in my high school, but even at where I went to school, there weren't a ton of bands, and so I didn't really think that was an option necessarily until I went to school.
But had you taken guitar lessons and stuff like that?
No, well, I took piano. I took piano, and starting in third grade.
And you sang in church and stuff like that.
I sang in church. I sang, and I tried out for the school play and didn't get in, and that kind of stuff. But
right.
There wasn't a ton of performing aspiration per se. Now I did do lots of other stuff that now I look back on it and I go, that was looking for some kind of platform, debate club and student council and stuff like that, where you get up in front of people, but it wasn't musical, and it didn't occur to me that was where it would land at all.
Because to me, that's pretty fast then, going from not even playing guitar to performing publicly country songs. Right. I
was so glad.
What was the name of the folk place?
Oh, the Postscript at Columbia.
The Postscript.
Yeah. And then we did some other stuff like Fernald Folk Festival.
Right.
The dorm folk festival at Columbia. Well, as soon as I kind of started listening to records and old country records with the idea that this was a thing that I could be into. I just had the urge to play and sing too, and I kind of sought that out pretty quickly.
When I was listening to your record today, I was thinking about the fact that like I had already been in these bands, but then when you and I started playing together, that was a newish thing for you.
Yeah, that was sort of one of the first things I did. That and with a couple other folks on campus. So and basically I couldn't play guitar, so I was looking for whoever could,
right,
and was interested in singing, either letting me sing or singing with me, something that was from that era of country music that I, had kind of honed in on that was interesting to me. So this 40s, 50s country thing. I mean, obviously you and I ended up doing a bunch of other stuff.
Right.
I wasn't trying to necessarily just recreate the past, but it was just something I just gravitated towards so strongly that I wanted to learn how to do it and figure it out. So, that was kind of the beginning of me performing.
Well, but to your credit, you were not above playing in a band like Bricks,
No.
which is far from traditional country music that you envisioned yourself singing.
Do you remember I always was telling you, I was like, I'm trying to turn Bricks into my country band, but it didn't work very well.
It could not work. There's no way that would ever happen.
My misguided.
Based on me and Andrew and Josh's skill set.
Yeah.
The country was not going to happen.
It's okay.
But
sort of our demented folk. What would you call that?
Yeah,
now?
that was like, it was kind of a folky.
A DIY folk.
Yeah. And it was like, it was lo-fi.
Very lo-fi.
It was like we recorded, all the Bricks records were recorded in apartments in New York on a 4-track cassette player. And 4-track Tascam Porta-Studio. It was just, to me, like that's what, I just did an interview a couple days ago, and the guy said, which is not an uncommon question, so when you started Merge and started, Superchunk, like, is this what you envisioned, like having the label this many years later or whatever? And of course not. That would be a weird idea if you did say that you'd envisioned that. But also, to me, it was just it was like Bricks. It was just like, this will be fun. Let's do this. And as long as we're doing it, why not like make something out of it?
Which I think is something that that you were good at. Like I think a lot of us might have hung out and played music and whiled away hours and had fun and kind of had the whole experience without thinking to hit record.
Bricks did not perform live very often.
That's right.
We mainly recorded. We spent a lot of time practicing, actually. A lot of rehearsing. A lot of rehearsing.
It's a lot of, I would say it was dorm room, but it wasn't even dorm. It was like an apartment band,
yeah. A lot of rehearsing, and then some recording, and then the occasional performance. But our performances we saved for very special occasions.
Indeed.
We played with Fugazi twice.
That's right. That was a big road trip. That was our big tour, actually.
Yep.
Because we had to
Washington,
drive to D.C.
and North Carolina also, did we? Or just in New York? We played at Columbia with Fugazi.
Yeah.
And I think.
Yeah. I think we did Cat's
DC,
Cradle.
And Cat's Cradle, yeah.
Yeah.
But we also opened for Swans.
The Swans at Barnard.
So opening for Swans.
I'm sorry, I'm calling them the Swans.
The Swans.
Is that verboten?
I don't know. Maybe it's the Swans. Maybe back then it was the Swans.
No, I'm sorry.
I think that opening for the Swans,
yes,
in 1989 or whatever is a pretty good gig.
It's a pretty good gig for a band that basically didn't play out otherwise.
That's right. I'm proud of our legacy.
And we also played at CB's on New Year's in the gallery one year with H.P. Zinker.
H.P. Zinker, that is right.
So, which I still feel like I have this indelible image of these curly-headed guys.
They had big hair.
Yeah.
We almost got signed to Glass Records.
That part I don't remember.
If you ever knew that.
Yeah.
The guy from Glass was interested, and I liked Glass because they put out these Jacobites records with Nicky Sutton.
Right.
But his interest was not sustained. So
imagine that. Well, it's a cool run we had there, Matt.
Yeah, yep. It was brief but bright.
Kitty Wells dresses, modest and sweet, gingham and ribbon, tied up so neat. They weren't made of satin or silk from Paris, but everyone knows that
also listened to part of Kitty Wells' Dresses today.
Right.
And the song Kitty Wells' Dresses,
Right.
not to denigrate the song, it reminded me of a Bricks song.
Oh, really?
In its specificity,
Right.
like
Yeah.
you were honing in on, like, in a great way,
Mm-hmm.
like this thing that was a specific, an item of clothing literally, and the materials that it's made of, all this stuff. And it meant something, it represented something bigger.
Right.
But the way that you addressed it as talking about this really specific thing.
Right.
Because, I mean, our songs were much dumber than that song because they weren't, but that's what the songs often amounted to, is like
Sure.
focusing on some really specific thing, like something that friend of ours said or something, or
Right.
like,
It was also very inside because they wouldn't necessarily mean anything,
right.
or they wouldn't have the same
But
meaning.
like picking
out
a
of context.
subject that was
Yeah.
specific and then talking about every possible aspect of it or whatever, you
Right.
know what I mean? And turning it into a song somehow that you
Right.
might want to actually listen to. I mean, this is like a much more sophisticated version of that, but I love that song and the way that you did that. It's not without being sentimental, or you know what I'm saying? Like without being maudlin about this person that you love and
Right.
you love their music and stuff like that.
Right.
It's more, it manages to be matter of fact and day to day
Right.
while talking about something that's really important to you, which is a hard thing to do.
It is kind of a hard thing to do. So we have like Girl with the Carrot Skin, the roots of
Right,
roots of
exactly.
Kitty Wells' Dresses.
That's what I'm saying. That's what
I
I'm
like
getting
it.
at.
I like it.
That's
I
what I'm
like it.
getting at.
Yeah, it took me a long time to figure out. Well, I think eventually, like if you, I mean, do you ever think you have that figured out? I mean, it's not conscious at some level too, you know, like, do I have the skill to encapsulate this thing? But you sort of work with like the images that are
Right. I mean,
recurring to you, and then figure out how to land on a song from that stuff that's
yeah, and to me, part of the conundrum at this point is worrying, like, have I written this song before? You know what I'm saying? Like, because if you play guitar and it's like, you know, and if you're not reinventing the wheel, which none of us are, then you start to go like, like literally have to think about it, like make sure I haven't like done this exact chord
Right.
thing before, song structure, whatever. While simultaneously thinking like, who cares? Like some of my
Right.
favorite artists, like when you hear a song of theirs within like 2 bars, you like know who it is,
right.
but it doesn't bother you because you like that thing
Right.
about them.
Right.
Like
They're doing their move or whatever it is that makes them them.
Yeah, but they managed to make it interesting, or you wouldn't still be listening to their records or
Right.
buying their records or whatever. So I don't think that I have it figured out, and I don't know if anyone ever feels like that. But to me, what is more the thinking, not do I have this figured out, but am I still doing something that's interesting?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Can I still write a song that's interesting and doesn't sound too much like other things I've already written? But I feel like at least a couple times per record, I have a feeling of I really like this song, or like I'm really happy with
Right.
this song. And there's other songs, I mean, sorry, listening public, that I just, in the end, I just think that song could have been better, but I
Right.
didn't know how to make it better.
Right.
You know, like, I love the bridge, or I love,
Right.
there's certain Superchunk songs that everyone in the band agrees we love the intro. You know,
that's
and
it.
after that, it's like, we don't really need
Yeah,
to
don't
play
know what
that
to
song.
do. It's so funny.
But to me, one of the hardest things, the aspects of that is writing the words.
Right.
Music, I feel like I could write music all day. Adding words to it creates this other level of difficulty in making it feel like you nailed it, or like it's right.
Right.
And that's how you want it to, okay, done. You know, got there with this one.
Right. Do you feel like that's sometimes I've actually, well, we talked about this a little bit because I've, especially my last record, decided that instead of toiling sometimes in kind of agony with a song where I was like, I don't know where else to go with this thing. And I'd done that for many years and been very perfectionistic and not not, you know, and it would eventually be like, oh, I'm just going to put that away because it's not resolved. And then finally just started to say, I'm going to ask somebody else what they think.
I love that you did that, and I love that you asked me and thought I could help, even though I could not help.
Oh, Mac, believe me, I have not given up, Mac McCaughan.
Okay,
We're
good.
going to, you are a man with not so much time, so we're just going to work out the
I
schedule.
appreciate you not giving up.
I haven't given up at all. But
What was the song you wrote with Tracy Ann Campbell?
Glass Armor.
Oh, yeah, that's a good song.
Yeah. So, but that was, you know, usually, or at least on the songs from No Way There From Here, a lot of the stuff that's, that I did end up writing with other people, I started myself and then kind of got to a point where I didn't know what to do next. Especially the couple songs with Franklin Bruno, who, you know, he came in and really helped with like.
Which songs did you write with Franklin?
No Way There and Someday Sparrow. And those both have like chords in them that you wouldn't have if you had been me playing limited guitar. Like
because Franklin is like, well, he's on the piano.
He's on the
right?
piano, so he'd be like, well, you could go here, you could go here. And I'm like, whoa.
Franklin's great.
Yeah, it's too many ideas almost, but it was great to have just that other perspective of like, it opened things up that I couldn't find myself on the neck of the guitar. But in the case of Glass Armor, that was a song Tracy Ann sent to me, and it is kind of hard to get something that's like pretty formed
and find your way in.
And
Yeah.
it took me like a year of just listening to it, and then I'd be like, I don't know. And then I just let it cook and cook, you know, just kind of, it was running in background. I hate using computer metaphors, but, you know, I just really had to like wait until I thought I might have a little idea. But then when I did, I was so happy.
Was your idea musical and lyrical, or
there were
just,
both.
Okay.
I wrote another verse and chorus, and I changed the chord progression a little bit. And when I changed it to be like the thing that I always do, then I really loved it. And I mean, not that I didn't love it before, but I felt like it kind of merged her sensibility with mine in a way that felt like it could be both.
Well, it's got to be really satisfying to do. Well, like it's satisfying to write music with the band that everyone's contributing thing, and when it all kind of fits together and it feels like this is awesome, you know. But especially if you've worked on it for a year and you finally get it,
I wouldn't say there was a lot of work. It was more like just listening and waiting almost until I could go like, I might try this, because I couldn't. I felt bad. I even felt like I should write her and say I'm so sorry, and I haven't. And I was like, no, I'm just going to listen one more time.
Yeah.
And eventually, it kind of happened.
Well, I love the song "No Way There From Here," and I was thinking about this when I was listening to it today, and thinking about songs that, I mean, it's super sad.
Right.
When you're listening to it. I'm not saying that the end thing of the song is sad, but it's like, it's a heart tugging song, not in like an obvious way, but just like, it's emotional. And what I like about it is that you don't really know what it's about.
Right.
To me, like, it could be about like your spouse. It could be about your kid. And I think songs like that are really interesting because you can put on it whatever you want to put on it as a listener. And then the chorus is just a great chorus, and it doesn't have to apply to a specific story. You know what I mean? But like the verses and stuff, you're kind of thinking about like who is she singing this to? Right.
What's funny, because that, talk about starting with something really specific, the way the words of that begin, like Sitting in the Dark, as the band played on, really was sitting in another person's show, and I just got this idea. But it was because I was recognizing what they were doing on stage was based on a James Agee novel. So
wow.
So they had taken lyrics and there's a famous classical piece that's like modern classical called Knoxville 1915. It's a Samuel Barber, and somebody's performing that. And I didn't realize, I was looking at the program, I was like, wonder what that's about, Knoxville 1915. And then when they started singing it, I was like, oh, this is Death in the Family. The lyrics from this piece are, and it just started me, I don't know, the wheels started turning. So again, it is a little goofy how, to me, sometimes like does anybody need to know any of that to hear the song? Not really. But it was very literal for me.
Well, and I think, for me, it helps to write it if there's some germ of something that's real,
Right.
because otherwise you're just kind of like, you just feel like you're adding bullshit on bullshit.
Right.
You know what I mean? But at the same time, you know, people in my bands or friends or Andrea, my wife, or my kids will say like, what's this song about? And
Right.
almost always it's not about one
Right.
thing.
No.
And so, which is hard to explain to someone. It's like, yeah, but you said it was about, like, you started writing it and watching this band play this song that had lyrics from James Agee novel. It's like, yeah, that's not what the song is about. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like, it's interesting how it can and almost needs to have some thing rooted in reality, but
Right.
then it's never, I mean, at least for me anyway, it's never about almost never about one specific thing, you know?
You know, I used to be frustrated sometimes. I took a voice lesson for a long time, and I really loved my teacher, but she would be really, sometimes I would be working on a song, and she'd stop me and say, okay, well, who are you singing to? And what? And she's like, just get really specific, make a character, and da-da-da-da, and all this stuff. And sometimes it would frustrate me because I felt like, well, what if the character is just that I fucking want to sing today? You know,
Yeah.
like I just feel like singing, and this is the song I'm singing.
But-
Like,
well, I think
to not
that's
be
what-
so method actory about it. Like, but to my point being that, like, you know, you can have like these things and they have meaning, or they have a starting point of how they became a song. But then there's also this space to inject your own desire to just express yourself in it, and it might be that can have different colors and varieties on different days and different whatever.
Sure.
So
It manifests itself,
Yeah.
even the same song can manifest itself in different ways,
Yeah.
but the reason when someone says, what's that song about? You know, like, you were playing it on stage and you were like singing really loud and you know what I mean? Like, you seemed really into it.
right,
How could it not be about something?
Right.
But it's more about an emotion or something,
Right.
you know, which, like you said, could be different each time you sing it. But I remember reading an interview with Martin Phillips from The Chills when he was talking about that, how, you know, if you have that feeling one time, whatever that feeling is, whether it's frustration or, you know, excitement or anything, if you have that feeling one time and you incorporate it into a song, like, you should be able to, or you hope that you can get there again
Right.
every time you play that song. Not that you maybe can,
Right.
but you would like to, in terms of like performing the song in
Right.
the most in the fullest way.
Right.
You know. Which is also similar to what Sammy Hagar said,
really.
which is that, you know, if a girl breaks up with you when you're 15 years old, like, you can write a song about that for the rest of your life.
I guess there are some
So
primal things that you can replicate that
just
emotion.
saying, Sammy and Martin, they're two peas in a pod.
Yeah, they're on the same wavelength.
They
there.
really are.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I've always thought that.
Oh my goodness.
I was sitting in the dark as the band played on, listening to the words of an old Southern song. It was a January day, but it felt just like June. I could feel the heat of the house getting late in the day. Your hand in mine as we made our way, cool green grass where we lay right down. When I knew who I was and who I wanted to be, but there's no way there from here, no bridge across the ocean.
For me and for Superchunk and even Bricks, the idea of making a recording in your apartment and then putting out a record of it, or a cassette or whatever at the time, grew out pretty naturally from the punk scene and people putting out their own
Right.
records and things like that.
Right.
But when we finished school and I went off to do that and you went off to make country records,
Right.
to me that's a whole other how do you know what I'm saying? Like, what is the thing that existed as your model? We had a model.
Right. Y'all had a model. There wasn't that much of one, although, I mean, I think I had a few different things that I had in mind and things that I was aware of, like, you know, in the mid 80s, like Steve Earle put out, and he still was on a major label, but, you know, he had stuff that came out through the Nashville system that was definitely not, you know, the mainstream country thing. And there were several artists that were like that, you could say.
David Allan Coe.
Maybe not David Allan Coe.
Not really main. He was not main. He was not mainstream, was he?
My gosh, I have to, now here's a digression with some details. No, I had this crazy day in Nashville where I was home one summer, and David Allan Coe famously would drive around. He had a white hearse that had David Allan Coe plates on it.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and I kept seeing it in traffic, and then it was following me for a while, and I was like, what is I've got to shake the David Allan Coe hearse. That's just randomly what Nashville could be like. It's just a weird town that way.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Oh, right. So in other words, like if we were saying, oh, we want to be like K Records or Teen Beat or Sub Pop or
that
something.
That didn't exist yet in terms of, I mean, there were maybe, if I'd been super aware, like you could have looked at what.
There's like some Hoboken stuff that had a roots.
Right.
You mean someone like Beat Rodeo or things like that were like country-ish?
Country-ish. I mean, you could even maybe look at like, you know, people putting out singer-songwriters or, you know, something like Lucinda being on the Folkways label or something. But
even that is like it's
a big thing.
Ryko and Folkways were like very established, even Sugar Hill, things like that. That's like establishment. That's not really.
Well, it wasn't. Like it was organized and an entity that like was run by grown-ups, maybe.
Right.
You know?
I guess that's the difference that I'm saying.
But at the same time, like I could recognize like what Lucinda was doing was not like it
was not what
mainstream
the Judds were
country
doing.
Product.
Right.
And it was something different that still very, you know, evolved and you know, high quality craft and all this stuff, but it was something that was not intended even to be on the radio.
She wasn't trying to reach Reba's fans.
No, not at all.
She was finding her own
people. I'm thinking
it
was this blend of all these different styles of stuff. And so I think I had people like that I thought, well, it would be really cool to have the skills to do that, like that, make that kind of statement even with your music. You know, I recognized I was very far away from being able to do that, but you know, could see that as something that you would try to do. And I probably have tried, I put in quotes, to write certain versions of things that I thought Lucinda did, you know, because, you know, I just admire her work.
You did a Lucinda song on which record?
On the Matador record, we did an old song of hers that she had never released. I think she even wrote it when she was living in New York, called Letters. But yeah, there wasn't that. I mean, in fact, just watching what you guys were doing. I mean, you even at Columbia were putting out. I remember you stuffing like, you know, it seemed like you were stuffing sleeves and and you know, what was that little I bought one. It was like a box of 7 inches that was all North Carolina bands.
Yeah, it was called Evil I Do Not, To Nod I Live, and it was 5 bands and 5 singles.
Right.
That we put out before Merge started.
Right. That was like a way pre-Merge thing.
Yeah.
Like the Black Girls and
Black Girls, Slush Puppies, and Wax were the 2 bands that I was in.
Right.
A band called Egg. And oh gosh.
You're gonna remember it.
Oh gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting this other band.
You can look it up.
Keep talking.
Well, I'll while you're looking, I'll just say that was happening. And it wasn't until I kind of met some people in New York bands after Columbia that had figured out, we could press our own 45s, and there was, you know, a couple of labels that started doing that. You know, very much following on the example of what was happening in indie rock.
The Angels of Epistemology were the 5th
go.
band, who we ended up putting out a record of theirs on Merge. Anyway.
Yeah. So,
Well,
did.
and your husband Jeremy had a
Right,
label.
he had a label.
Had they started that label? When did
That was probably 1990.
okay.
So it was right around, and then our pals in Chicago started Bloodshot, and we're doing, and that I think they probably launched pretty quickly right into CDs, like, so I felt like.
But those are good analogs of what we're talking about.
Yeah, that was like what grew out of that moment where, wasn't a country thing per se, but then it might as well have been, it could be just that as much as any other kind of genre if somebody wanted to put stuff out. Although I didn't, I don't think I ever, other than being on Bricks, we did a 45.
We did 2 45s, Laura.
Yeah, sorry, excuse me.
And a compact disc.
What about
and a cassette.
The getting wet part? What was that?
That's a 45.
That's the 45.
7-inch,
Yeah.
And Girl with Carrot Skin was a 45. Yeah.
No, those.
That was your first appearance on record.
Yes, it
Girl with
was.
Carrot Skin. Yes.
Proud to
You're
this
proud
day.
of it. Yep.
But yeah, no, those that indie model kind of it caught up with with what had been already going on in indie rock ultimately, but yeah, it wasn't as obvious, I think, right away.
Right. I have all your records, and I've listened to all your records, but I think it's interesting. I mean, I always like it because I'm old. when someone's most recent record is my favorite record, because that gives me hope. But there's something about the No Way There From Here that feels just more you.
Right. I think that's, I would say
Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that.
Do you think that has something to do with recording it in Nashville? Do you think it's just experience?
I think it's experience. I think it was I hadn't made a record in a long time, so I had more of my own material.
How many years between?
It was 8 probably. So, I had
That is a long time
put
between
out
records.
the Matador record in 2005, and then I got pregnant, and then I, was I did Kitty Wells, after about 5 years when Bella was little, and then I was like, I got to figure out making another record, and by that time I had stockpiled some songs and song ideas, and so I think that's why. And I was very conscious of that when it was time to record. I thought, this is important to do in a way that kind of reflects me, and not just like a group of people that I've been playing music with in one place for one amount of time or whatever. So it was a little, the choice to go do it in Nashville was part of that, kind of claiming the Nashville identity, in a positive way instead of kind of running away from it.
Right. Did you feel like you were running away from it for your first few records?
No, but I actually felt really awkward about Nashville just because it's so filled with,
Broken dreams?
Yes. Every Uber driver's got a song for you, man. No, it's such a professional's town, I mean, it's more than that now,
Yeah.
but in terms of country music,
It's a business.
it's a
big
business. And you could very easily be judged to not be relevant to that business. And I felt like early on, like, it was just much more comfortable to like do my thing at a remove from that.
Sure.
And it was great that I, was able to find an audience that also was like, oh, we get this. It's country music, not have to be sort of ordained by, a Nashville entity of some kind. But finally, when I made the Kitty Wells record, I actually felt like, oh, who gives a shit? I'm from Nashville,
Yeah.
Kitty's from Nashville. I can go make this record in Marky Never's living room with Chris Scruggs and
that was
William
that the first
Tyler
one you did with Marky?
First one I did with Marky.
What's the name of his studio?
Beach House.
Beach House, right.
Where the Lamb Chop and a bunch of folks,
Clientele made a record there.
Oh, really?
On Merge, yeah. And Mount Moriah on Merge did a record there.
And then, they've got, Andrew Bird and
Will Oldham has done some stuff
He's
there.
done a few things there. So, plus then Charlie Louvin, Bobby Bear, a bunch of great country old timers have also used the studio. And I just felt like this is the right place that kind of combines like the deep knowledge of like what country is and also this kind of great attitude about it.
I was going to say Mark's attitude
Yeah.
is more punk rock than
Absolutely.
than country.
Yeah, and so it doesn't have to be defined by like some trying to be country one way or the other. It's just like do it that way. It's yours. Call it country or not. Like what the fuck?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in general, after making records for a long time, that is there are certainly downsides to having made a ton of records in terms of what we were talking about before, and making sure you're not repeating yourself, and trying to keep it fresh and exciting for yourself as much as for anyone. But one of the good things is that if you can get to the place where you don't give a shit, then it's very freeing. If you're just like, I'm making a record because I want to make a record, and it's going to be fun and it's going to be good, I'm going to make it good because I know how to do that. But you're not doing it because there's an expectation. I mean, Superchunk didn't make a record for 9 years, and I made records in between. But when we came back, the only pressure was from ourselves, because no one probably thought we were going to make another record. So obviously you have the idea, well, if you're going to take 9 years off, don't make a record if it's going to be a shitty one.
Right.
that would be lame. But, because people would say, why bother? But again, if the expectations aren't there from the outside world, you can just be like, oh, this is a different feeling than when you're in this cycle of every 2 years, what's this record going to to be like?
Right, and what's the story going to be?
Figure out a way to talk
record?
about this record.
Right, like what's our narrative?
Oh my God, it's so exhausting.
The narrative is we made a record.
I hate music, what is it worth? Can't bring anyone back to this earth. I'm filling the space between all of the notes, but I got nothing else, so I guess here we go. Cramming to the back of a van, oh yeah. All of our friends with no credit, oh yeah. Some wild jockey up in the front seat, whatever it takes, and put up your feet on the dash.
You talked about how, and I appreciate this, like recognizing like that No Way There From Here. It's kind of my most like fully me thing. But I felt like that when listening to
feels
last
confident, and it feels comfortable,
but
like you're comfortable doing it.
But I felt that way with the last Superchunk record, and there was like this, kind of quality of expression in it that was really direct, and at the same time, I didn't have to know every detail. I didn't have to understand every detail to know what the emotional impact was of the songs. And did that feel more kind of grown up to you, or more sort of were you conscious of that, or?
I mean, I try to be conscious of, in other words, part of me, just writes songs all the time, or makes demos and things like that. But part of me, when I'm actually making a record, thinks about the lyrics and wants them to be better than the lyrics on the last record, or then at least better than lyrics from 20 years ago, And I feel like that process of I still don't rework things. Like, I still don't scribble out 50 verses before I get the one that I like. I'm just not, I don't have the patience. But I feel like in that stretch of time from, and I always wanted them to be good, obviously, but I feel like in that stretch of time between Here's to Shutting Up in 2001, and then over the next few Portastatic records, which you sang on the third one of those, Be Still Please, I feel like I was trying to write lyrics that were not more literal, but more focused or something. More, again, it's so hard to talk about lyrics because you can't say like, well, I wanted them to be more meaningful. but
well, you could say that.
But just less. It's very easy if you're halfway through a song, at least for me, on the first few records, halfway through a song and you really like the first verse and the chorus to just be like, oh, second verse? You start looking around. I don't know.
That's good enough.
That's good enough. It's about those grapes. And I felt like I was trying to just pare things away in a way, and have things be more direct again, not literal, but just more direct. And I feel like, at least on some of the last couple Superchunk records, it was like that. And you know, the second of those two records, the Majesty Shredding, I think was really was a little bit about fandom and being in a band and, you know, music that you like and stuff. And the second one's called I Hate Music.
Right.
And that was more about death and getting older and like losing friends and things like that, which sounds like it is very specific. Maybe it is easier to write songs when you're writing about something really specific. But you still got to figure out a way to write about it in a
that's not going
in
to...
a way that's just not super literal
Right.
or like I said, maudlin or whatever, you know what I mean? Because no one wants to hear that, like super downer.
Right.
I mean, I like sad songs, but not if they're like beating you over the head with the, you know, grotesqueries of life.
Well, it's funny because, you know, I mean, I'm sorry. Just, you know, seeing you last year at Hi-Fi doing By Yourself, Jackie Matu, you know, and it's like, there's a lot of sadness in that song, but it's a triumphant thing to hear it played. Like, you know what I mean? It's almost like, it's not the emotion you walk away with is like, you know, something very alive, you know, it's not like...
Right. And I think that's what, I mean, I think that comes from punk rock. I think that's what, when you're listening to a Husker Du song or something, it's just like, it's a lot of like intensity and sadness and catharsis and all this stuff, but at the same time,
like
it doesn't make you want to go like mope away.
Yeah, it's like boom, you know,
right.
It's like got a real impact. That's like,
and I like that combination of, you know, this part is dark and then this part is super energetic or rocking or whatever.
It's in a way, well, it just becomes like more, I'm going to be sappy, but it feels very affirming. It's like you walk out and you go like, oh yeah, I got that, like viscerally, you know, the impact of that song. And like, I can, you know, it's energizing or something. Like it makes you feel like, okay.
Well, and I think that I've always taken the approach of, writing songs that I would want to hear as a fan, you know, and copying bands that I liked, you know, starting with the first Superchunk record. And that's the feeling that I would get from seeing, you know, we were talking about the Chills before, seeing a band like the Chills live, you know, like you don't necessarily have any idea what those songs are about. Dan Destiny and the Silver Dawn or whatever that, you know, like, but it's like when you see it live, it's like it makes you feel a certain way and it's very exciting. So that's, I mean, I think that's a goal in a way with our records, you know, and with performing in a way, you know, because I don't like seeing bands that look like they don't want to be there.
Right.
I don't need to see someone who's like going crazy.
Right.
But I mean, you can be presenting whatever you're doing in a way that's subtle, but you still feel like the person is like present,
right?
You know,
or there's a purpose to them being there and doing it.
Yeah, as opposed to the purpose is that it was the next date on our tour, and sometimes you just feel like that, and that's what happens. But it's weird because the Non-Believers, which is my most recent record, is almost all. I mean, almost all of it was written on keyboards. I mean, there's a lot of guitars on the record. It ends up being a lot of guitars on the record, but and so that's very non-performative for me because I mean, I can record that. I can't play that live, and we don't, and I don't try to. But in some ways, I like the idea of writing and recording songs and making a record where it's not about, because it's easy. It's. I'm not saying it's like a crutch, but it is a crutch to just be like, well, this song is like, I don't really have good words for it, but if we just play it really loud and fast, like, someone's going to feel it. You know what I mean? And sometimes you just have to get over that way. But I like the idea of more like the songs being, they're still like linear songs with verses and chorus and stuff like that, but trying to create the impact in a subtler way. Yeah. And leaving space, which is not something I've always had trouble. I like it when I listen to other people who have a lot of space in their music, but I've never been able to really do that.
Right. Well, even just like having the keyboard is just it's a little bit different language than the guitar. So you get, or maybe that's not the right metaphor, but whatever, it's,
Makes you write differently.
Yeah, you totally, hear things differently. They, it resonates differently, and you do kind of want to like, let some things ring out in a different way than, when you're, especially if you're playing electric guitar as opposed to acoustic guitar. I mean, I'm not super advanced on the guitar anyway, so I can't do what a lot of people go like, oh, would you play those open G or whatever? Like,
right.
And I'm like,
some other voicing or something, some weird tunings.
I have no idea.
No, but I think you're right. And I mean, to me, even picking up a different guitar than you normally play can make you just write a different kind of song.
Right.
So I think that you're right about that. Like having keyboards in some ways makes you think, wow, I could write 10 more songs, and none of it will sound like my last 10 records or whatever. And it's especially weird when you, it's kind of funny also when you do that. And then for me, I thought, okay, now I have to learn how to play these on guitar so I can play them live.
Right.
And then you realize, oh, I'm still just playing like D, A, G, D. It's just that it sounds cooler because it's on this synthesizer. Well, I'm still just using the same 3 chords I always use.
Oh my.
But it's fun. It's fun to write and record in a different way. I think it really just leads to writing different kinds of songs.
Right.
Oh, I have a question for you.
Okay.
What are your daughter's favorite bands?
Oh, her favorite bands. It's funny. This is totally true story. Ringo Starr is playing on Halloween, and she, we just kind of realized that. And Jeremy's been showing her some, like of the Beatles cartoon that they had, and also, Yellow Submarine and blah blah blah. So she was like, "Mom, is there a meet and greet thing for that Ringo Starr show?"
Wow. She's going straight to like, can I just meet a Beatle or? Yeah.
And I was like, well, you have to put that in context, like, because Jeremy's up at Sirius, like every other day there's a thing, and she got to go meet Taylor Swift last year, so it is
right. She has some experience with meeting her people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but I, at first I was like, the dang little brat, wants to go see if she can get in line to meet Ringo. But then I was like, well, at least she was like asking about meeting a Beatle,
right.
As opposed to, she went to see Katy Perry last year. It's funny. She's not super dialed into bands yet, I think just like a lot of her kids in her school, like they all know the Frozen soundtrack and they know the songs that are in Madagascar and all the little kids movies. And
so wait, how old is she again?
She's 9.
Okay.
So
Arthur's 8 and our daughter's 12. So she's a little older. So she's into Taylor.
Right. Oh, I'm sure.
And Lord, and some other people that sound like Lord. And, but she's also into bands like, Fall Out Boy,
right.
5 Seconds of Summer, like kind of,
I get those names all jumbled.
Punk
pop.
Yeah. But the Beatles are still a constant, and Arthur especially is into the Beatles. Like when it's his turn to pick a song in the car, like he often picks a Beatles song, usually either Help or Here Comes the Sun. But no matter how many times we tell him that two of the Beatles are not alive, he'll just about halfway through he'll be like, think the Beatles will ever get back together?
Oh,
I wish.
it's so funny.
But I'm glad that the desire is there.
Yeah.
For them to get back together. So Una's taking guitar lessons now, and so she's trying to learn some Taylor.
Taylor's
songs.
probably a good place to start.
Yeah.
For, I'm sure there's many guitars getting sold to young Taylor wannabes.
Yeah.
Which is hopefully a good thing. So, but yeah, that's basically what she's still like figuring out what she's into. But every now and again, she'll ask me when she hears a female country singer, she'll go, "Mama, that's not Dolly, is it?" I'm like, listen again. And then her other question is, so who's the new queen of country music going to be now that Kitty Wells is dead?
Wow.
It's very that little literal thing.
That's amazing.
Of kids.
Who's next in line for the throne?
And then I'm going to tell you this, and it's going to sound goofy, but we were at a folk festival. There's a festival up on the Hudson that Pete Seeger was involved with when he was alive, called Clearwater, and I played it a couple years ago. And also the same year I played it, the Norah Jones trio called Puss in Boots played, and my husband is a big Norah Jones fan, so we went and tried to wave at her backstage, and Jeremy was trying to get Bella to meet her, and it was all kind of here's our beautiful daughter, shake her hand. But then the other day I heard Jeremy that a Nora song came up on the iPod, and he said to Bella, "Remember that woman that you met at Mama's show and blah, blah, blah." And he said, "That's her on the iPod. She's one of the greats." And Bella just turned to him and she's like, "I thought Mama was one of the greats." And I was like, yes,
she is.
Ka-ching.
Yes, she is. Good.
Right answer,
Good
kid.
line, Bella. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. You know what you're doing.
Exactly. Maybe just work that. Just keep working that. So.
Well, maybe we can get our daughters together. They can do guitar and cello duets on some Taylor Swift songs.
That sounds good. That sounds good. Mac, it's been so cool to get to hang out with you.
I always love seeing you, and I don't see you enough.
That's
so
right.
Thank you to the Talkhouse for giving us an excuse to just sit down and talk.
And that's it for this edition of the Talkhouse Music Podcast. Thanks to our producer-engineer, Elia Einhorn. For more Talkhouse Music podcasts, by all means visit our SoundCloud page or subscribe to our podcasts on iTunes. And to read smart, notable musicians writing about new music, please do visit thetalkhouse.com/music.